Kecha yoxsatini kat Johan. Ye awa achilcheits. Wuke away. Kakadane yil sa. We will sa yes. Sandich ak. Talk iti. Gosh talk aya Yesu koa. Helwasaka kwati. Gosh lisatin. Glay dak husatan aya ha anika. Hechasaku saye yiti koa. Chat. Cha Yesu aya. Glade aya. Recording in progress. Chwachuin. Yewe. Achtuye iti koa. Tauk achtuasagu. Aka tauk iti. Gultech sandech ak aya yakwahich. Aka yaw. Qone aya hinika. Haska kwatluch. Ya atluch uhin aya. Yata aya. Yegachtustini. Wutusaku. Tauk iti aya. Qone kakwaha. Ye awa. Ya shingetat khai. Gwall hadis uchu aya tak. Yis disi aya tak iti. A joe we yis at chai qa aya yehas kakwaneyan. Ye awa yehas jiwuneyan. Yek echa chish. Dasat dat aya tu yitlaat. Ya yidat. Gwall yituasagu yikiwatani helwasa kakwati. Yachana. Itnak itak shkalniki. Tsukach tutu. Ushkinach. Aqa away. Gwall. Genki we ye daduni at dat. Yuch agach tulla at. Yit koha. Ja adusa.
Vannacht je yatach scheni Johan a chunk kedin quadrisa ya spring break qua just gogenk kone in the
Echa chish.
Chushugu Okde Kokokin I don't know the het flying plane. uh, uh, I don't know the word.
Okay. Ilwasa uti. Echa chish.
What is the word for a human flying in a plane? And I heard it was different than a bird flying.
Oh. Like a pilot?
Like if you're riding in a plane, I remember one time our elder said it's different than when a bird is flying compared to us being inside a plane and a plane flying.
Well, it's different in this way. Like a single bird would be atyan. A person would also be atyan, but for people it wouldn't pluralize. So you'd say yantudeqin, which is unusual because most motion verbs, like you could say something like gwaltak iti dequaha, or gwaltak iti de yaknehin. Wait, wak kuchte has yakanahich. I think it's spring is coming because the tawak are flying back. So I've been seeing them around, and so it goes to yakanahich. So that would be yahaskanahich, would be they are flying. But that would only work if there was like multiple people all flying their own airplanes. I think it would still work. But other than that, the verbs are pretty much the same, I think.
Thanks. That's where I got tongue tied.
Hlwasa, wuddaqin. That's Khotakin, I flew there. Okay. Anybody got any thoughts, questions, things you were thinking about?
I made a spring break sentence.
Oh, okay.
Chas yechka dukak shkasnike jechwane woodslidzi.
Yeah, it's a big story. Skashnik Klein awa, Skashnik Klein. So that'll be once we finish Tanaki Dakhan. We're just reading Tanaki Dakhan, having fun with it. But then I'm going to give you folks a little bit more time with Yesh Katukak. Just trying to translate, just translate what you can. If it's not very much, it's totally fine. Because we're going to go through it. But it's just a good exercise to sort of see what kinds of things you're starting to spot now. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, let me pull up the right version of that. I guess, yeah, I'll do this one. Okay, what do you guys want to do first? You want to do a little bit of grammar stuff, or do you want to get back into the story? We'll give you a choice.
Oh, grammar.
Okay, let's take a look at some of this stuff. So we'll start with the words of the masters. So let me zoom in here a little bit, adjust my view. Okay, does somebody want to read that for us?
Layak Kachwen Hede Ya Shut Maniladi Ha Kusti Da Yejini Jiyene Ka Hayu Khatangi.
Okay, and this is Jukatine. Her name in English was Jane Smarch. She's Kokatan. And anybody spot any things in there that you recognize? Or do you know what this translates to?
Is that it's as if you're being wrapped up?
Well, so this is it's as if, and then this one is a noun actually. Ikahwin. Yisukuge daso ikahwin. Anybody?
Does it have to do with like I'm gonna be off, but it has something to do with is it like warp or weft or anything like that? Some kind of fibers of some type?
No.
Flower, that's it. Somebody got Taylor got it.
There it is.
Jeez.
It's okay. Look, together we know it. Okay. It's as if flowers will pluralize. You don't always have to pluralize the shinget. Just keep that in mind. Hey deya shunaish adi.
That's the word I'm curious about, that shunai adi.
Okay. So this one, heyday, is this direction. Ya and na are putting this verb into what we call like progressive imperfective, or it's happening right now. And this verb means to lead somebody, like plural people to be leading. Like especially like we'll go out in front and you follow us. So this is the word for leading somebody. If the adi changes to goody, now you've got a singular version. It's as if you all are leading flowers in this direction. Next part. Hakusti dayeji ne kahayu katangi.
Akusti, our way of life. Yeji Neyi. Kayuchatangi is our language.
Yep.
Jie, Jienei, Jinei, Jine. Kleshwasaku.
Okay, anybody know? Ye ji ne.
Is it our work or something like that?
Yeah. You all are working on our language, or working on our culture and our language. Let's put it all together. It's as if you all are leading flowers this direction, working on our culture, our way of life, and our language. Those were her last words, said to another language learner. We're all communicating with her. I wasn't in Whitehorse. She was near and dear to my heart and my work. And we sent a lot of messages back and forth. Okay, so here's Qajakte. Anybody want to read that one? Make it bigger. Oops.
Yaduchat
Oh, Kalchish.
Klet Kwan Akat Yi Sawuk Guk Ya Yakeyat Ya Slinketani Ka Kudzitiyat Ka Aka Haswunechiat.
Kalchish. And what do you folks recognize in here? I guess we'll take it in chunks. Any thoughts on that? So this underlying K at the end of the verb is often signaling a don't mode. So what we call prohibitive, don't do it. Don't you all forget it.
This great thing, these great things.
Mm-hmm. Yashingit ka kudzati at.
The things born in the world.
Yep. Ka akak haswunechi at. So this one, I'm going to say the ut is a singular thing, and that's another one. It doesn't have, it could be singular or plural, right? But in this case, knowing the context of this speech, he was talking about our language and our culture. So don't you all forget it, this wonderful thing. It was born on the world, and on it, on the world, it saved them. So he used to talk about this a lot, Walter Soboleff, that the language is what enabled people to survive. And so his theory was it's also what will allow us to survive, especially in this particular place. And so this was part of a longer speech, which you can check out. It's Jock Alice Taff, her work. She recorded a conversation with Qajakti and Wushchechu Ish, Walter Soboleff, and George Ramos. Okay, Qashqawu. I would like to read this one.
Chatsu ach chagachi ye kwati shaatlech kugagas te stinget
Sheesh. Agag'iqwati. What is that part?
Sorry, which one?
Agag'iqwati.
Achagachi Yequati. My it is within you, whatever belongs to this person, as in the chagachi.
Yeah, so the agag is a prayer. So
Okay.
agag'i. And then yeqati is going to be or will be. And then chakleich qaqasti shingit.
I think of like in the storytelling mode, like, oh no, that's Chu.
They're
So
pretty close. And so, yeah, when you look at this, you got to look at what comes after. And so chakleich.
okay. Chitlech. Oh, I know I've heard that, but I can't think of it at the time.
Chwasa?
Chitlech.
Anybody know that one? Chakleich.
Chakleich, isn't that like one? Being the everything's one.
Oh,
Chakleich.
No?
So without the underline and with an apostrophe, yes. But with this underline, chakleich is forever.
Oh,
Chakleich. Qaqasti. Let it exist. Shingit. So this was the closing part of a speech that he made towards language learners to give them inspiration. Great speech. It was just amazing. And just to be there and to listen to it, it was phenomenal.
So before you change, can you say it the whole thing through so we have it like total?
Achagaqiyeqati chakleich qaqasti shlingit. So this one, so like when you say haqusti, it's the same verb as qaqasti and the same verb as qudziti. So it means life, to exist, to be born. And in this case, let it exist.
My prayer.
Achagachi is my prayer.
My prayer.
And then, so like, yeah, so you could use this to build other phrases. Achagachiekoti. Hechwasakakoti itat. So someone's getting ready to take a journey or something. My prayer will be that you will be safe, that you'll be okay. So here is Kachwan Ish, George Davis. Oh, that was Cyril George Kakwedi. Okay. Someone want to read this one?
Das Tulaan Ka Kusakan Kwa Itek Tuye Nau Chawasa Ye Ukke Igatini Yaan Ituhiani Kuu Kwa I Ede Askukdashi.
Sheesh. And just to Sha'an. What do you guys think about that?
Only kindness.
Kakusachan.
and love.
Kwa is a condensed version of ku'a, which could mean however, but it also could just signal like we're really going to focus on this thing. Iteich. Oh, let's do iteich tu ye na'u. Do the whole thing.
Your heart Oh, I think I've mixed myself up by doing that chade yechatnu.
Oh,
Tuye na'u is giving it your heart or something like this.
a little close, close. This, and we'll look at this Yena over. Anybody else got a theory on that one? Tu Yena U.
Put it inside your heart.
Yeah, put it inside your heart. So this Yena U could mean wear it, use it, put it somewhere. It just depends on how it's being used. So when you say cha'ade yechatna'u, you're using the same verb. It's like you're saying just use it on me or just put it on me, right? So you don't even say, like, there's no real verb in there for forgive. It's like a real kind of a metaphoric way to talk about it. But so just kindness and love, though your heart inside, put it. So just put them in your heart. Okay, now we got kind of a longer, complicated one. Chawasa ye ke ikatini.
Is chawasa, is that however?
Yep. So however. And what about the ke part? Anybody know what that part is?
Is that something you're going to do? We're gonna do?
Not quite. So like you might have like ye gachtusane or something like that for we're going to do it. Ke. So this verb right here would be yati in a different form, right? So like again, they changed lots and lots. The more you look at them, the more you'll start to spot them and figure out what might be going on. Ke is, there's a whole bunch of these things that are kind of directional things. So they might pop up to say where something is. And ke is out of control. So it's not used a whole lot, but I think it is important. Chawasaye ke ikatini. So this is you, the I. However, things are going out of control for you. Like, and so this is in Tlingit concepts. If someone was like really messing up in life, you might say, they're really out of control. But it's not like they're the ones who are out of control. They're the object. Like their life is out of control. And this could be referring to a lot of things. Like, you know, if you've ever known someone, or maybe you've gone through it yourself, where it's just a string of just bad things, just all in a row. You could say, and you're really, you know, talking about going through some hard times. So however things are out of control for you, or when, you know, there's a bunch of complicated things going on in here. Like the ikatini is like whenever your life is going out of control in any way. Ya'an itu sha'an iq'u. Any thoughts? So this on is not land or a village. It's a'in. From a'in you get on. And so a'in means with it. So this with it, itu sha'ani, you are kind, you were kind. Ku'u, people. The people you were kind with. Ide. Usually most people would say ide, but you know, he's the master, so we just write down how he said it. Maybe they will help you. So he was a wonderful speaker to work with. I worked with him and Marge a lot. one time I was packing up all my recording gear. We had just done a bunch of work. Then he said to me, like, here's what my mom used to say to me all the time. And he just said this amazing speech. This is just a chunk of it. And so I just listened to it, and then I took my phone out and I hit record, and I said, could you say it one more time? And I've got a recording of it. I got to redo the video because we found some edits that needed to be made. It was pretty fun, but his wife she was lovely. She was wonderful, but she would always talk on the phone sometimes when we were doing work, and I couldn't. I told her one time, I was like, could you like not do that while we're working? But then it felt rude to tell her to not talk, so you'll hear in the background a little bit. She was always calling about Sealaska dividends. I was like her number one thing, I think, or where to get like something on sale. She would just call, like she had a whole list of people she'd call. She was great. Okay. Shukshani, Marge Dudson, Ishkitan. Let's see, who wants to read that one? Let me make it a little smaller. Okay.
Akach kunai shagao hayukatangi. Kunach akach kunai shagao. Heshtasa yach kuge hayukatangi.
Sheesh. So, akach kunai shagao hayukatangi. How do we interpret that one?
Akach on kunai shagao is fight, right?
Yeah, it's a command. You're commanding
That's
multiple people to fight. This kach, there is a kach that looks exactly like that, and even could come right before it, and that would mean on it. But this one means for it. So a kach, and it's used with a few different verbs for like what you're going to do the verb for. So like if you just told people kunai shagao, you're telling them like fight, and so maybe they'll all just start fighting each other, right? Like literally, like fist fighting and stuff. But a kach kunai shagao is not really a violent thing. It's just saying like fight for it. And then yeah, our language. And she says that again. Kunach akach kunai shagao. Really fight for it. So kunach is like really. So it pops up before a verb and it just amps up that verb. Heshtasa ayach kuge hayuch atangi. What do you folks think of that one? We're just looking at parts. Anything you recognize?
Well, looking at parts, Yukatangi, our language, Kuge is something large. Hetdasa, I keep on thinking of like Kletdasa, but Hetdasa's.
Same thing.
Is she saying it's nothing? Not it's not. It is not too big for us.
You're on the right track. You're on the right track. And so I would probably say, so here's Heshtasa, which is nothing, right? That Heshtasa is nothing. And then you have Ayach Kuge. Ayach Kuge in the positive form would mean same size, right? Same size as it. So Kuge has to do with big or many or plentiful. Heshtasa ayach kuge. Nothing is the same size as our language. So when I translated this, that's when I heard her say it, because I was like, how do you say fight for our language? And then she gave us this. So she got fired up. It was really great. And then she said this one, the last one, which I told to Nora, and she was like, yes, that's true. She got really excited too. Nothing measures up to our language. So that's how I interpret that. And I'd say our language is better than anything else, but it's like, if you took it away, there's nothing that could fill that space. Okay. A few more left. Kakshake. Norman James, he's Duckloedy from Carcross. Okay, who wants to read that one?
Tlakahat ushuk hastudat at use aus darin. Tlakada use al atgen. Hastudat schenke hastu ya ak.
Sheesh. Okay, so tlak ahe tsu shukha. Well, I guess we could do the whole thing. Hastu datat yusyawastaqin. Pretty big language in here, a lot of stuff going on. Anything that you recognize in here or you want to take a stab at?
Is tlak, is that suddenly?
It's always. Yeah, and so chayuk would be, we can say chayuk or chayuk would be suddenly. So chatlak, all the time, always. Tsu, again. Shukha, first of all. This is a pretty complicated verb. Hastu dat at use was taqin. So I'll probably just give you this one. So hastu dat, about them. At use was taqin. They used to care for them. Always, again, it was the first thing. They used to take care of them. So like, even conceptually, a lot of stuff in there. Once you start translating it, it gets a little tricky. And so he's putting jatluk in there. So it's like all the time. The first thing was taking care of them. And this Tlingit does this a lot. It'll just use them and stuff. And then it'll sometimes name them. Sometimes it'll name them first. Sometimes it'll name them later. So then we get it again. Jatluk ada yus atkin. What about that one? Oh, this IN thing. Let me tell you about that real quick. So that K, that underlined K that we saw is sort of signaling don't. This IN, or it could be a UN, is usually symbolizing not anymore. Right? So it used to be, but not anymore. What about the ada yus atkin? Any thoughts on that?
They talked about it or they discussed it?
Yep, they always talked about it. Right, so here's a da, right, about it. They always used to talk about it. Hastu dachanki hastu ya'ak.
The grandchildren?
Yes, their grandchildren. Ya'ak is a really neat word. Anybody know what that one is? This is a place that's reserved for somebody. And so when you put the whole thing together, it was always the first thing, taking care of them. They always used to talk about it, this place they reserved for their grandchildren. In the context of his speech, he's a wonderful speaker. He gets real, he doesn't like to talk in front of people a lot. He says, I want to do this. I want to tell you this thing. I got this thing I'm thinking of. The old people, they used to see way out in the future in our language. And I was like, what? And then when we sat down and he just went through it, and it was a pretty short, it's a recording, it's on YouTube. I think all the transcription and translation is on there. But he said, and then but that's what he said. He said because they are always thinking about them, they would see out into the future so that they're thinking about how this stuff is going to impact future generations. It was amazing. It was great. Kingesti, Dave Katzik, Shangu KD. Who wants to say that one?
I'll do it.
Ah, Kashish.
Ate latsini ye awe adai dayaka ye dua yak kwan kusti la nuch keke kadidzi la lead.
Kashish. Okay, so we'll go through this one. Adil Shitsiniye. What do you folks think of that?
Our culture, I know what it means, just can't think of it.
What about this Chitzin? What is Chitzin? Anybody know?
To be strong.
Strong, right? So when you take a verb and you basically put ade, and you put a suffix on it, and then yeah, you're talking about the way that verb is happening. So I would say the way to strength. Maybe that, there's probably different ways to interpret it. The way of being strong, the way of strength. This is a verb. You'll see this in some different ways, but this means that is how he's saying it how they are saying it to them. One person is saying it to another, right? That's how they are saying it to them. Yidu ayakwan. And this is often said with a G, Yigu ayakwan, but he always said it with a D because he said that's how he used to hear it. And I would say this is be of brave heart, or have strength and courage. There's different ways to interpret this, but saying be brave, have courage. Kuste chadzinuch. What do you folks think of that?
Life is tough.
Life is always hard. Yep. You are not going to quit. So he was telling a story. It's a Qanach Teidi story. It says Yi Yuhan, of a sea lion and a ptarmigan. And the uncle was teaching the nephew, the uncle sea lion, who was the leader, was teaching the nephew about Tan Kusti, about their way of life and how to be a leader and how to be strong. And that's what he said to him. Or maybe this was later in the story when King Gesti says it to us. I can't remember. Shkateh, Chukin Shah. I read that one.
I'll go ahead and read that one.
Sheesh, fitting.
Iko ala kwan ye shlish ko has ka ye eight has wasi ach ye dat.
Okay, oh, the got a little off there. The under. So here, Yigu ayach one. Oh, that one's missing too. Oh, I better check my posters. Yishlish ko hascha yichet haswuse ach yidat. So here it is again. Be of brave heart, be strong, have strength and courage. Yishlish kohas, your ancestors. Cha. Cha is like, I usually translate it as you see, so we put focus on something. Yichet haswusi ach yidat. They are listening to you now. Oh, and the context here, she was one of my teachers, elders. I worked with her a lot, and went to visit her in Sitka, and asked her. I just said, "Hey, what do people need to know to stay inspired, to stay strong, to not give up as they're learning this language?" And she gave this wonderful speech, and then it came to like a crescendo with these 4 statements that all started with Yiguayach one, and then there was something after that, and this was the first of the 4. There were 3 others that came after this. It's wonderful. Kakashat, Florence Shakely, she's Shukach Adi. Anybody want to read that one?
Let's do it. Di sa yen kati yakati.
Sheesh. Oops. Hastu itik kakati sak yen kati hayatki. So this yen kati, same verb as yeyati, same verb as yekwati. So yen kati is let it be that way. Hastu itik, in their remains, in the place where they were, kakati sak. Akedi is a seed. Sak means it's going to become this thing. So whatever the sak comes after, you look right before, and that's the thing it's referring to. Hayatki. Let our children become seeds in the remains of our ancestors. So a lot of times when you're talking about the ancestors, you just say hastu. Like sometimes you don't even mention them. It's really, really interesting the way that the ancestors are talked about in Shinget. Okay, Huchiayi Kasech, Selena Everson, Deishitan. Who wants it? It's the last one.
Ha wisanech ha yukatangi.
Sheesh. How do we interpret that?
Our language saved me.
Saved us, so there's the Hausenech ha yukatangi. So she and I were a tag team. We were testifying for a language bill, and she would go first and I would follow her, and I'd usually just sit right next to her. And during her testimony, she said this, and I was like, yes, that's it. Because they're always talking about saving the language, but like she was like, it saved us, and just really emphasizing that it will do it again, right? Hausanech hayuchatangi. Okay, sheesh. So this is part of a posters. Well, one, it's a poster series. I'm very excited. It's almost done. I gotta do some final reviews, but there's gonna be a 6-foot tall version of it. Let me just show you folks what it looks like. Let's see. So it's going to be installed at the Penn Museum. So this is what it'll look like. Oops, a little bit of lag, I think, there. It's a big file. So if you go through, it's 6 feet tall. So you've got these 3, then you got a wolf design, and then you got these 2, and then an eagle or a raven design, and then you got these 2, and an eagle design, and then these 3, and then there'll be a panel that sort of talks about, that translates them and has their name, and in front of them, it's going to be in this kind of cabinet, and in front of it is going to be a piece of silver that's 4 feet long, that's engraved by Yeshetzin, Nick Galanin, and then he's twisted it up, and it's going to look kind of like a piece of DNA. And so the name of the piece is Hatuye Tihayukatangi, like our language is inside of us. And it's talking about like literally programmed inside of us, but there is this blank side of the thing, which is the danger of not sort of awakening the language within us all the time. So then the idea is to, it should, I'll check the Akidi and the Chish. But then I'm going to take the individual ones and make posters out of it and then send them around to language classrooms. So that's the goal. It's close. It's almost done. It's taken me a
That
long.
is beautiful.
Chief.
Chief.
And it's fun, you know. It's sometimes rough to think about the folks that we've lost, but then I always think about the things that they said, and then I wanted to make sure that there was just stuff that we could put around us that show their words. And yes, so Hakedi in the dictionary, there was a question. It is shown, so these long dashes means it needs a noun to belong to. And so here it is. So you'd say Hakedi, or you could substitute the for anything. So you could say Hakedi, Appleseed. Johnny Hakedi. He's got a hard name, Johnny Appleseed. And so then you could have, so any kind of seed. So you can have whatever the thing is, and then Hakedi after it. Okay. So the next thing in this is sort of just trying to think about how to start visualizing how verbs work. So I was trying this tree metaphor based on, I saw a presentation in New York City with, I think it was, I want to say like one of the, maybe Mohawk or, shucks, I have to check my notes, I can't remember. But I saw it and they were doing this thing with a tree or something. And then I saw that, I was talking with Joel Isaac, he was there, and he works in Dena'ina language or Dena'ina, and they had done a similar thing, like just trying to visualize like a tree. So I was like, okay, I'll draw like a tree, and then we'll talk about like grammar is a tree, and then you got the roots and everything. So we'll start at the top of this tree. So the top of the tree is the first thing you're going to hear or see, and it's going to be on the left side of the verb. So one of the outermost things is what we call the pluralizer of the third person, hus. So this hus can pluralize the object or the subject or both, right? And we'll look at a whole bunch of examples, but that's when you see the hus popping up, which sometimes just turns into the letter S, that's pluralizing the third person. So it's turning it into a plural them. And then over here, you've got what we call the preverb spot. And we're going to talk, and this means it's a word that pops up right before the verb. And then it could deal with motion, for things to move. It could deal with meaning, for things to be maybe to completion. And it could deal with modifying the verb. So any sort of adjective or something could pop up right there. You're going to do it quickly, you're going to do it carefully, those types of things. And hold that thought. I'll be right back. Somebody just rang our doorbell. Hold on. Okay, sorry. Somebody came to the door. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so here we go. So this could also be things like yay and k, which mean yay is downward, k is upward. And so moving down the tree, then we get to the object. The object is the one that the verb happens to. Happens to me, happens to you, happens to them. There are situations where the object is actually the subject, but it's pretty rare. So it's pretty much always like that's the one it happens to, okay? In the next thing down, going down these little branches, we have what we call a thematic prefix. That means we're going to put a noun into the verb. You could put a head there, you could put a finger, you could put a horizontal surface, a vertical surface. There's different things you could put on there, the end of something, and I'll show you some examples. But it goes, the object comes first, then those thematic things. That the mouth, that could be on there. To, inside, that could be in there. Then you get inside of that, the conjugation. So this is a set of prefixes. They got fancy names in linguistics for them. All we're worried about is what they do. It's going to talk about a perfective verb. So it kind of is we're just talking about whether or not it has happened. We're going to put these certain combinations in, this one, this one, this one. Now you're in the future. But it's always going to take place right here. Bunch of stuff right here. And what makes Tlingit kind of complicated is these things start meshing with each other, changing each other. On the inside of that, you got the subject. Who is doing it? That's the subject. These are collectively called the prefix. The last part of the prefix is the classifier. So the Tlingit classifier is usually a single letter. Then you can add the I vowel to it, or you can add the D sound to it. But by default, they're not there. You can just add them to just change what the verb is doing a little bit. Okay? So these are the different parts. Let's go a little bit lower on this tree. So here we are. We were just right here. Subject does it. The classifier shows us what the verb is doing. And I'll show you some concrete examples of when the classifier changes and what that often means. At the bottom of the tree, you have the root, the verb root. That contains the meaning. T is be. Teen is see. Tseen is strong. Right? And so there's just going to be this list of them. You learn this verb root and what it means. Then you learn the way you add verbs. So let's say you have a verb root. The way you can make new verbs is by changing the classifier group, adding a thematic prefix, adding or subtracting subjects or objects, and sometimes putting things into the preverb. Yati is a verb which means to be. Yachyati means to be like something or to be a certain color. So we've added the word yach, and now that changed the meaning of the verb. The verb root has also what we call a stem. The stem and the root are not the same thing. The root means what is the meaning of this? Teen, see, T, be, chash, cut. The stem is saying what is the vowel doing? It could be long and high, it could be long and low, or it could be short and high. And it's predictable. But there's a set of things that together tells you what the stem is going to be. So you know you have T, ye T is long and low. Yekwa T is long and high. Kesh ye ute is short and high. Same verb, exact same verb, but that's how it changes shapes. Down here in the roots of the tree, below the dirt, is stuff you don't have to get into right now. I would say stay above the ground. But what you're dealing with is suffixes that deal with repetition, that deal with being relational. So it's this because of that. That are decessive, it used to be, but not anymore. That in thing. There's two of them, one to remove, one to restore. It's wild. And then there's to miss, like you could say uncha. I shot at it but missed. And there's a suffix just for that, to miss something. And then for something to easily become something, right? Then way under the surface, you could put things after the verb. The most common one is going to be nooch, which other people will say nuch, and other people will say neech. It just means it always happens, always happens. Then there's three others too, like when this is happening and because this happened, but that's down in the dirt. We're not going to get down the dirt yet. We're going to stay up in this part of the tree, okay? We'll go a little bit longer and then we'll take a break.
Except for on our homework, we have a lot of suffixes.
Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, it just seems like it's hard. There's lots of layering of suffixes to try to figure out what the words mean.
Yeah, and so as we go through and sort of translate that together, we'll see like how those things, because yeah, they do change. And especially once you start getting into, the stories are fun, but the stories are also like the big senior language, right? It's like teaching someone English and just like dropping the book of Shakespeare in their lap. Like, okay, we're starting with this, right? So it is pretty big time stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, we don't know if we're serving someone or killing someone, so.
In the beginning of that, there's a little bit of killing going on.
Okay, so just okay.
Okay, so another way to look at this stuff. Here's the preverb, here's the object, thematic, conjugation, subject, classifier, stem, suffix, postverb. These are all the parts, and within these, there's a whole bunch more, right? So we're just going to start like with these little blocks, right? We'll start with these blocks. We're going to walk through, look at some examples, then we'll take our break. So things that can pop up in what we call the preverb. That just means it's the spot before the verb, but you cannot remove it without changing the meaning of the verb, right? So you got things like motion, like adekwagut. That's where you're going. You could say hit day. You could say hundake hiti day. All kinds of different things right there. But for motion verbs, it's important to say where you're going. Also, you can pluralize. So here's hus akaushachit, which is now they wrote it, a plural they. It also could be they wrote them, and it could also be a singular they wrote a whole bunch of things, right? To the self, so you can have chush or shtu or sh popping up right in front of there. So studying means I'm teaching it inside of myself. That's the literal interpretation of it. And you can also have negative things. Those pop up right before the verb and they impact that verb. Klesh chwasaku, right? So that's what the klesh is. That's the preverb spot. The postverb nooch is the most common one. So that's the only example I showed. So yeskukaheinen, that has a suffix on there. Klesh kushkade nooch. When the fall comes, it's always bad weather. There's the nooch. Chaklak askuk nooch. They cough all the time. Okay, so that's the before and the after stuff. Ask questions if you got them. I'm going to keep going. Coming in, we have the object and the subject, but they're in different spots, right? They must go in this order. So part of your work learning how to use verbs is just using this list of object pronouns, using this list of subject pronouns, looking them up and kind of putting them together. So the red one, here's the objects. Khat isakhan, you love me. Khat yi shuk, you all laughed at me. Ye ik qasatin, I will see you. Ha wu ich, they invited us. Okay, so there's those ones are in red. These are similar verbs here. Now we're looking at the blue and who is doing it. We'll do, this is the Tussin version, yim tu ich. So here's ha wu ich. We're the ones who were invited. There's a third person who did it. You tu ich. We invited y'all. Okay, you tu ich. We invited you all. Ich sechan. You I love. Right, so that's the order. Who it happens to, who's doing it. And they're built right into the verb. Yichwashuk, I laughed at all of you. Yeikkosatin, I will see you. Haswatu'ich, we invited them. Okay, so there's to, cha. So we'll learn these ones as well. There's a list of them, and then there's a list of these, and what we're going to start practicing is different combinations of them. So like once you see them, so if you see ha, then you could start putting them into other places, and you know, and ye, and then cha and tu. So those, it's looking at a list and sort of just starting to memorize that list. A thematic prefix changes the meaning of the verb. So for example, if I said khashkhit, I furrowed it like a garden. I made these furrows in the garden. But if I put ka in front of it and change the classifier, khashkhit, I wrote it. Same verb root though. Adat yu khatan. Kha is a mouth. Adat yu tutan. Tu is inside of something, right? Mouth, inside. Talk about it. Think about it. So this isn't all of them, but this is probably the most common ones. And if you looked in this spot, you could have up to 3 of them. So here's column A, column B, column C. So you have, let me zoom in on this a little bit. So here's 2. You could have k, which is relating to a space. It's in kudzati, yakudzage. Ka, comparing 2 different things. Ye kuge, that's this one. It's this big, right? J is a hand. It's in yejane, which becomes work. T is inside, which includes thoughts. Sa or se is a voice or a neck. Like there's a verb for decapitating and it has this in there. Sh is a nose or a point of land. Da is around or about. Kha or k'eh or k'ah is a mouth or an opening. Sh is the head of something. Sh is the end of something. Is what we call athematic, and we'll look at that later. Okay. And I'm not expecting anybody to know any of this stuff, but I do need us to start knowing this stuff is there. We'll go back to the story, we'll go back to the translation, but we're going to start building this stuff up so that we start to grasp these chunks of it. Ka is spherical or round. There's another ka, which means the horizontal surface. And then ya, but you can't have both of these. It has to be one or the other. And then ya is a vertical surface. So let's look at some, we'll look at some examples of these, right? The next thing to think about is the classifier. Every verb has a classifier group that it belongs to. Within that group, you can activate this thing which we call the I vowel. And when you put that I on, you're saying it has happened, or we're talking about it happening. Okay, that's why the letter I is there.
When they put that last part, you froze.
Oh, okay. Okay, so this letter I can pop up. And the I, and we'll talk about what that I means. What does it look like? But what it does is it usually signals the verb has happened, or we're talking about the verb happening. So any verb that has happened, is it that way, then you should expect an I there. Okay? And we'll talk about what that means. But right now, let's talk about the groups. You have 0, S, L, SH. These 4 groups. Okay? 0 is a default. There's by far more 0 classifier verbs than anything. The next 2 are S and L. One of the reasons it would switch to an S or an L is to say it's not just that way. Somebody's making it that way. Yata, it's hot. Yishata, you heated it up. So it went from 0 to L. Yanik, they are sick. Yisanik, or I'll do it this time. Chosanik, I got them sick. I gave them a cold. The other times it might change is it'll change to an S classifier, sometimes to say it's a certain type of thing. I could say, Ye chatyati, that's how I am. Shukach adich chatsiti, I am a member of the Shukach Adi group. So sometimes the S is there to say, we're talking about types of things, categories, classifications. That's why it's called a classifier. Sometimes it switches to the L to say it has that thing. There's a clan house called Shigushi Hit. It's a house with a dorsal fin. If I put on a hoodie and I pull the hoodie up and it has these little ears on it like a teddy bear, it could be Shiguku Udas. It's a shirt with ears. And that's why you call a vest Shushjini. Klesh Ushjin. It has no arms. Okay. The SH also has meaning generally. They kind of generally have meaning, right? 0 is a default. S is a category thing. L is to have that type of thing. The SH is sort of an unwanted type of thing. Not every time, but that seems to be the pattern. So here's some examples. We have this same root, teen, with to see, with the 0 classifier, Kate chatin, I see a dog. That's all I'm telling you. It's just, hey, look, I see a dog. That's it. Any old dog, not any specific dog, just a dog. But if I've been telling you about this dog that comes over, knocks over my trash, digs in my garden, poops in my yard, like, huh, Kate chwasatin, I see that specific dog. That's why I have to say irsatin, because you are a specific thing. And now I'm going to watch that dog to see what it does. Kate khashatin. Same verb root, but now the meaning is changing and the shape of this root is changing. And then here's the other one, the SH one. Keshkuchatin. I'm blind. Okay? So the classifier does all of this stuff. It works in combination with these conjugation parts, and if there's kesh in the preverb. So that, and the conjugation would say like didn't happen, did, will, might, those types of things. So like here's some conjugation stuff. Ade yan chakut. The ya and the na are saying it's this type of thing happening right now. Ade kukwagut. Ga, and qa say it's happening in the future. Adechwagut. This thing that sounds like yuh, that's what says we're talking about whether or not it has happened or not. It's what we usually call the past tense in English. And aden kakut, let me go there. This is a hortative, like let it happen, like kokakasti is using this type of form. Okay, a lot of stuff, but we will start walking through it. Okay? Are we okay? Should we take our break? I know I had to take a little break earlier. So maybe 5 minutes, is that okay? Okay. Cajun when it's Ah, what's this tea? How's everybody?
Sugar.
Okay, we're really in the trees now. So coming back, we're still thinking about like this within this conjugation spot. So this preverb conjugation classifier. These three things do a lot. They do a lot in Tlingit. So a lot of times what we're talking about is, and we use these terms, right? Because like English, you'll use things like present tense, past tense, but it gets more complicated even with English, right? So I was teaching English, and then I was an English tutor at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And one of the hardest things was someone came up to us and they were playing, I think it's called World of Warcraft. It's like a big online game. And somewhere in the game, they had like this grammar quiz. So they said, put all these verbs in English into the simple past and the past perfective. And we're like, what? And so once we looked it up, they were like, oh, well, that's what those words mean? Okay, yeah. So did and have done. Went and have gone, right? So those are the two. So we just sort of, once we figured out the pattern, we were fine. And so we got to got or get, and we had got and have gotten. And one of our English teachers was like, no, you cannot say have gotten. You cannot say that. So let me tell you what these things mean. So imperfective. This means it is happening right now, or it is that way right now. Okay? Anything like yak-a, chitzin, yanik, those are all imperfective. Okay? Imperfective negative means not that way, not happening right now. Okay? And so what this tells you is, so to say, to have this, this is what the classifier will look like. This one says you put klesh in front of it, and now the classifier must always be minus I. Almost every verb, we call these modes, almost every mode has a minus I classifier. So minus I is just the default form of the classifier. And we'll look at classifiers next and say, what does that mean? What does this mean? Perfective, that means we're talking about whether or not it has indeed happened. It doesn't have to do with time, because we have things that can be perfective, but that'd be that way now and that way before, right? So it's not really about time, but it's about just saying, did it happen or not? So if it has happened, you're going to have y. So this is all those verbs that you hear, wuti, huagut, those types of things. And the classifier will be plus I. And I'll show you a chart that shows what this stuff means, okay? So I like to think, well, we'll get to that in a second. So it didn't happen. Klesh, then you have to have plus y, and it has to be minus I. Future. So the perfective would mean like it did happen or it became that way. Didn't happen, didn't become that way. Is going to happen, is going to be that way. Isn't going to happen, isn't going to be that way. So for these ones, you might need yay or k in front of it, and you'll know why later. There's a formula to it. You don't put k in front of every verb in the future. You don't. There's a formula to it, okay? But in this spot, you must have g, and q. Those three things combined to say future mode. That's just how Tlingit works. Every classifier must be minus I. So what we're going to do later is we're going to learn how to put these things together. Okay, so not every time, because you can't do the grammar stuff all the time. It gets overwhelming. It makes people tired. I know that. Same with the future negative. You put tleh in front of it, but all the other rules are going to be the same. This progressive imperfective, it just means it's the ing. It's happening right now. Walking, running, all those have to be that way. You're going to have ya or ke or ye in front of it. Then you're going to have na. Ya na gut, ya na anaskoin. Right? So all of those, they'll have those two things. Also minus I classifier. Imperative, do it. That's the command form. You must have what we call the conjugation prefix. 0, na, ga, or ka. We'll talk about that as well. But that's when you're going to say like, cha, eat it. Nata, go to bed. Qanu, sit down. Gidan, stand up. Then the hortative, let it happen. Let it happen. Let them do it. Let me do it. Let's go. Those are going to use both the conjugation prefix and this thing we call ka. Okay. And then we're going to get to some examples. Then we'll just look at sentences. Then we'll go back to our story. Every classifier belongs to a group. Okay? In the verb, that classifier belongs to a group. What are you talking about? Yak-e, it belongs up here in the 0 group. What does that mean? It's going to be ya or nothing. If it has happened, if it is good, then the I will get activated. The I, it goes this way when it has happened. Yak-e. Ich sitin. Shitzin. Choshaguk. Okay, so that's how these ones work. It stays in this default form if it hasn't happened, right? And we'll look at this stuff later. We'll look at a whole bunch of examples, but there is going to be quite a bit of time in your learning spent figuring out what these things are and what they do. But the basics is that it belongs to a group. It has to stay in that group. It doesn't switch. Usually it's going to be one thing or the other, right? It's usually going to go between sha and tle, sa and se. So like chwasiku, I know. Klesh chwasaku, I don't know. Most of them are going to be in this form. But if you're saying it is that way, it'll switch over to that form. Okay? The next part is this D thing. Some of them are just built in there. They're just a D thing. But what the D could mean one of two things. The subject is also the object. I did it to myself. Shtichtleha, I sent myself over there. Shchotzatin, I saw myself like in a mirror. If you're doing it to yourself, that will require this D to pop up. Or we're doing it to each other. Other things are just naturally a D verb. It's like, well, you kind of do it to yourself, so it's always going to be there. The other time the D will pop up is if there is an object. Chwatu, I read a book. Chwaditu, I read. Sometimes if you kick the object out, it'll push it to be plus D. Okay, and we'll look at lots of examples of all of this stuff, all of it. But we're going to back out. Unless you got any questions, we're just going to look at some of the pronouns and how they work.
So a verb can belong to the sh classifier group, but then it could have a plus D, and then it would have a tle.
Yes.
Oh.
So, and that's why when you go from yi'in chwatletu, I taught you, to shtuchwatletu, I taught it inside myself. I studied. So that's why the D pops in there. So when you're first starting to look at classifiers, I think it's very mysterious, but there's a whole set of patterns. There's a logic right here, which is just saying, did it happen or not? That's what the I does. The D says, did they do it to themselves? Or did they boot the object out of there? That's basically what the D does. And then every one of them belongs to a group, which is generally happens. S and L could be, we're switching to say somebody made it happen. S often has to do with categories. L often has to do with having a certain thing. Was there a question?
Yeah, my question was, you said D, if they did it to themselves or you booted out of there. What is I missed that.
If it has an object, so
Okay.
it means like I sewed a vest. But if I'm just saying I sewed, like I'm not talking about sewing a thing, I was just sewing. Last night I was sewing. Object got kicked out of there.
I see. Okay. Okay.
And you'll see some examples. That part is a little tricky, but it will make sense for some. Not every verb does that, but you can say kach shechit, I wrote it. But you can say kach jechit, I wrote. I was writing poetry. I was writing stories. I was drawing pictures. Yeah. So these are. It's the night of big concepts in Tlingit. So these are the big concepts. And I'm not expecting anybody to just grab them right away. There'll be certain ones that you'll start grabbing now and then, but we'll just keep looking at examples and talk about it. Any other questions, thoughts? This is the decoder ring as well. We're unlocking it all. Okay, so now let's just look at these are pronouns. Tlingit has a lot of them, but you know, every language deals with pronouns differently. They're fun. I think they're fun. Hawaiian has so first person, second person, third person, right? That's pretty common. Talking about myself, talking about you, talking about this other person. 1, 2, 3, right? Tlingit has a fourth person, so just people. Hawaiian's pretty fun because you can have first person singular, first person dual, so you could say me, us two, and then first person plural, us more than two. So there's also second person single, dual, plural, third person single, dual, plural. So in Hawaiian you can say me, us two, us, you two, you more than two, that person, them two, them more than two. In the first person, there's also a first person plural, inclusive and exclusive. So just using that single pronoun, I could say us and you, or I could say us but not you, right? Pretty fun. So some of the things with Tlingit is one is this number system. First person singular, me. First person plural, us. Second person singular, you. Second person plural, you all. Third person human, that human, them. Third person not human, it. You can make your own decisions. If you think your dog's a human, I think my dog's a human. My cat's a human. That mouse, sometimes, but probably not. But it's up to you. A lot of times animals will be but sometimes they're de, right? Third person plural, so them. Fourth person human, a person. Fourth person non-human, something. What we call reflexive, to myself, chush. And what we call reciprocal, whoosh, together or to each other, depending on how it's being used. So the first thing is just remembering there are these types of things. That's what we're talking about. Me, us, you, y'all, them, plural them, like that, people, something, or someone, someone, something, self, together. Okay? That's the first thing with pronouns. Second thing, there are these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 types of pronouns. And what you got to do is just learn to spot which type it is so you know which list to pull from. Okay? So the independent ones are just saying like, Yadu khat, here I am. Khataya, khane, it's me, khane. Wa'akwa, is that you? So they're usually used like is it or it is. Here it is, just with yadu, wedu, heydu, you do. Or to put ku'a after it. We're at the Tlingit restaurant and I'm ordering for everybody because I'm that type of person. I don't know. Khateach tuasaku naedi ya akhlaq ku'a akhlaq huku'a. Right? That one though, they want this. So they're used sometimes to just draw attention to who we're talking about. Right? So I might say, if I just knew you, I knew you liked the color blue. Ishq ituasaku. Khatqo'a on. You like blue, but me, I like red. Right? That's what these ones are used for. Gusu wa'eh. Yadu khat. Or just to specify who's talking. Uhanoe. Shukach adi. It's us, the shukach adi. And then we start giving our speech. The second group is possessive. So, looks like I froze. The second group is possessive. So now instead of me, it's my, our, your, you all's, their, its, plural there, someone's, something's, the self's, together. Okay? Together is not very common in this one, but the thing to remember with these are the types of pronouns you use when you're talking about the direction of something. So for example, if I say, next to me, ach, chan, ha, chan, I, chan, yi, chan, du, chan. If I'm talking about on me, it's raining on me. Ach, ka, it's raining on us. Ha, ka, siu, daku, satan. That's how these ones work. English uses a different one. It uses one of these ones. It's raining on me. You don't say, it's raining my on, but that's how Tlingit works. So just remember, languages work differently. That's why we go over this. This would also, like any body parts, kinship terms, would be drawing from this one. Achtla, my mother. Hatla, our mother. Itla, your mother. Yitla, y'all's mother. Dutla, that person's mother. Atla, its mother, like a Wolverine or something. Hastutla, plural, their mother. Katla, mothers. Atla, that one doesn't really work. The mother of something, I don't think that one would. And then these two also wouldn't. Chush, well, you could have chushtakatatchan. You're your own grandparent. That means the Tlingit way of thinking of it, whatever your father's clan is, if your father is the opposite clan, you marry into that same clan, those children are their own grandparent. That's considered, historically, it was considered a strong lineage. Okay. How are we doing? Everybody okay?
What about wooch, wooch-een kind? Have you heard, like, is that the same like whoosh?
Yeah, so whoosh and wooch are interchangeable. So you could say either one. Whoosh and wooch are saying the same thing. But then when you have the teen part, you'd usually say wooch een or whoosh teen. But they have to go in that, those mean the same thing, but they have to go in that combination. And that means together, right? So wooch een verb, doing the verb together. Whoosh verb, doing the verb to each other, right? Big difference, big difference. So like you say, wuchin yejitune, we're working together. Whoosh yejitune, we're working on each other. I'm gonna fix up your arm and you'll fix up my shoulder, right? So you just gotta make sure you're using the right one. Okay. Then we get to objects and subjects. Who the verb is happening to, or whom, I guess I should have said. Who is doing the verb? And then so for those ones, we're going to look at examples because they're just embedded fully in the verbs. But before we look at those examples, and here's the list. You just need to have this list, know how this list works. Happening to me, chat. Happening to us, ha. I'm doing it, cha. We're doing it, tu. And just, eventually, and it seems like a lot, but through these drills, you will memorize these, so you'll know which one to use. Because someone's doing something to someone, and those are the things you got to say. Khat yisqa, you said to me. I yautusaqa, we said to you. Right? And the love one is a good one, because you could say, Khat yisaqan, you all love me. Yi tusaqan, we all love you. But just remember that order is like who it's happening to, who's doing it, and then usually the verb. The last group is what we call postpositional. This is usually to who it's happening to. So you might say achin or khan or achit, achit idishe. So this is popping up sometimes to be what we call like an indirect object. And so like there's just certain verbs where you'll see these, right? We might be getting too deep into the soil. So we'll come back and we'll look at those. Let's just take a look at here's some sentences that use these independent pronouns, okay? Ya duchat, here I am here. Uhan oe shingit chasati, it is us, we are shingit. Wa'e akwe, is that you? Shtakat yuhan, gunash chish, thank you to every one of you. Hukoa hindu tuasagu, that person, them, they want water. Right, so especially this would work well for like if I just said I want coffee. Kakoyach tuasagu, hukoa hin, right? Awe shek you do a sock. It's that one. It's called Shek. This is the mountain in Chilkoot, right next to Chilkoot Lake. Hasawe Kagwantan. Them, they're Kagwantan. Chashtakat everybody. At awe ayayati. There is something there. Okay. But those ones they're not all that common. The possessives and the object subjects are more common. Possessive ones. Achla awe, that is my mother. Hayuchatungi, our language. Ika gle dakwu satan, it snowed on you. Yikach achtuwuklaqe, I am proud of you all. Dutuwuyake, they are feeling good. Adat yuqaqwatan. I'm going to talk about it. Hastu ish hus, their father's people. Heshqa tuwa ushka. People don't want it. People don't like it. Atdugu. Something's removed skin. So just hides. Hides or furs. Now we'll look at some objects, right? So this is all used in a lot of the same verb. This one pops in there to show you. This one we write it as unmarked. So 0 just means it's unmarked. There's nothing there, right? But if there is both a third-person subject and a third-person object, then you must have a on there. Okay, it goes from 0 to a. Okay, I am good. Khatyak. We are good. Hayak. You were good. Iyak. Y'all are good. Yiyak. They are good, or it is good. Yak. They are watching them. Ashtin. They are good, plural. Hasyak. People are good. Qayak. Something is good. Atyak. Well, that one you wouldn't say. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I don't think. Everybody okay? The tree is taking long.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. So let's just take a look at it with a different verb, the love verb, right? We're focusing on the object here. Khatsekhan. They love me. Hasekhan. They love us. Isekhan. They love you. Yisekhan. They love you all. Asakhan. They love them. Has asakhan. Plural, they love singular them, or singular they loves plural them, or plural they loves plural them. This is one of the things with Tlingit is you cannot tell. If there's both a third person subject and object, you can't really tell which one is pluralizing. You could specify it outside of the verb itself, but there are a couple of spots that are just, same with this one, Isakhan, that could be she loves, they love you, or you love them. There's just, yeah, there's a lot of love going on. It's all good. Qisakhan. They love people. Atsakhan. They love something. That one doesn't make a lot of sense, but just showing you the form. Now the subject, same verb, right? So you have a third person object all the way down here. Khasakhan. I love them. Tusakhan. We love them. Isakhan. You love them. Yisakhan. Y'all love them. Asakhan. They love them. Has asakhan. Oh, yeah, same thing. Has asakhan. We did that one already, right? Dudzekhan. The d does change the classifier. Okay, if you're ready for an advanced rule, here it is. Every non-zero classifier, when it has d, the fourth person built into the verb, must always be minus d. You cannot have dude and you cannot have duda. Every non-zero classifier, L, S, SH, must be plus D when they encounter D. must be dudze, dudle, dudje. It's just one extra rule to remember. You'll see it later on. The way the postpositionals work. So we'll look at the verb telling information to somebody. Ach in akawanik. They told me. They told it to me. Ha in akawanik. They told it to us. In akawanik. They told it to you. Yi'in akawanik. They told it to you all. Du'in akawanik. They told it to them. Hastu'in akawanik. They told it to plural them. That one must be the plural them. Qa'in akawanik. They told it to people. We're almost at the end. So this is going back. So here's the verb, object, subject, classifier group, verb root. Khan. This tells you something about the stem. What you need to know about this little X thing means it's always the way it's written. Never changes. This one will always be short and high. Okay. There's some extra information here. Was there a question? Okay. For S, to love, O. So this one, we're changing the subject. Okay. Here are the objects, all third person. Unmarked, 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 because this is also third person. Here's the subject. Cha, tu, I, ye, nothing. Third person is always nothing, right? Cha is I am doing it. Tu, we are doing it. I, you are doing it. Ye, y'all are doing it. Sechan, that part of the verb stays the same. Chasechan, tusechan, isechan, yisechan, asechan, hasasechan. Okay? That's it. Now you know it all. Thoughts, questions. That was 2 hours of grammar. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if I'm remembering this correctly. Maybe someone can help me with this. But in our study group, we were looking at Asawe, and that was a tough go on that one.
Who is that? Is that what you're saying?
And I was just, is that what it means?
Oh wait, us. Go ahead.
Ausewa.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Ausewe? Where did y'all?
Yeah. It was in the translation exercise on, I don't know, page 3 or 4.
Or let me see.
I thought Asakhan, but the Ausawe, yeah, that was it. But I mean, like, I thought it was like Ausawe rather than Ausawe, but it definitely was Ausawe.
Oh, you're right. Asiwe. No W. Asiwe.
Oh, wait, why not?
A little more, or yeah, a little more farther down, I think.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. It's a typo. No.
Okay. Chach, shach, asawe, duchant, uwakut. Okay. So there are, this is a combination of particles. Okay, so let me make this bigger. So what you have is oops, oh, I got my caps on. And then you have se, and you have we. sometimes you're going to have giwe in there and stuff. There's a whole bunch of these little things, right? In terms of what are they doing when they start popping up, and how do you start to sort of recognize them and what they do. I would say asiwe is like, I guess it was. That's generally how I would sort of translate it. Oh, where did it go? Did I lose it? So sometimes these things are popping up. So khach, shach, asiwe, dekhant uwakat. The khach and the asiwe, I would say ignore those right now and just say, what does shach, dekhant uwakat? How would we look at that? Zoom in.
They went to their side.
Yeah. So here's do khant, to be beside them. Uwakat. They went to be by them. Shach. Anybody know what that is?
No.
This.
Is that, sorry, is that have to do with like something with talking at some point? That CH just in addition to that or something?
This is like saying actually. Actually, so khach asiwe is a common, there's a couple of particles there. And I would say when you combine them, you'd say, oh, well, actually, it was this that went beside them. It was actually heron.
Heron?
Heron.
Mm.
This is a bird.
Yeah, like the heron story.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
Shlach.
Mm-hmm.
So this Asaway was a far cry different than the Asakhan we just saw.
Yeah, and so what gives it away is there are high tones right there, so it could not be the front of a verb. The front of a verb, the prefix, won't have any tones in it. It won't have tones. So unless that was, and typos are certainly possible because I make them all the time. And whether English, Hawaiian, Tlingit, I make typos like crazy. I was texting a friend and I meant to type yuck a and it came out wrong. And I typed it again and it came out wrong again. Like, but different. So I was like, I give up.
Well, that's very helpful. Now I guess I can see that that helps me set up a rule in my head that it's not always going to be that way. With like Asaway, Asakhan, just there's different.
Yeah, it sure looks like a verb, but yeah, you'll start to spot those. And the more you do this type of work, and it's kind of slow going and it's a struggle, and I know, but you'll start to just, this is how you start to do a lot of this pattern building as well. I know that the grammar stuff is heavy, so like every now and then we'll drag it out and open that box and take a look inside, and you know, it's like you just want to drive a car, but I'm like, no, you got to see how this whole engine works. And take all the pieces out, right? But it does make sense when you start to see it more and more. There's a lot of mechanics there, but like that's the whole intellect of the language. It's really fun stuff to look at, and you'll never run out of questions now. Never run out. It's fun stuff.
What are the extra screws and bolts then when we put it all back together?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch, right? And then I always joke, I'll be like, today we're going to read from the Book of the Rules. And here's all the rules for grammar. I was like, tonight we'll read from the Book of Exceptions. And then it's like this way, except for this thing, when this thing's happened. So it's like, when I think of it, it's like Raven, he's teaching how to play cribbage. And he's like, oh, well, actually, no, that's 3 points for me because it's Tuesday and that's a black card. So there you go. Fun stuff.
Everyone tune into Molly of Denali in 1 week.
Oh yeah,
We
my
have,
episode is finally dropping.
Your what?
I wrote an episode of Molly of Denali and it's coming out on Tuesday of next week.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Very fun.
It's about classifiers and
Oh, geez.
Molly learns about classifiers.
She'll probably get it before me.
Well, you know what? There was this Norman James, a fully highly fluent Tlingit speaker, and we're talking about all this stuff, and he said, "Chuya kam tunda tundi kam lechis wutin." It's as if my brain got tangled in a seine net. So just go swim in the water for a while. We'll come back to it later. It does make sense the more you do it. Don't feel bad about it because there's so much there, so much stuff. But once you just start to get it, it unlocks the whole language. Like that's the key. It's the key to moving out of memorization and into just putting stuff together. And it's artificial at first, but then it starts to naturalize. So Yigoya Juan Gunchish Washikachtustin.
Renee, I wanted to stay and just let you know I had sent you an email with my timesheets, and I just wanted to ask if you can sign those and get them to me when you can.
Oh, sure, I'll do it tonight.
How
How